introduction. Our next speaker is His Excellency Mr. Mr. Kung Pok, Deputy Secretary General of ASEAN for ASEAN Socio-Cultural Community, who will be speaking live from Jakarta as we look to the future on how ASEAN could collaborate in advancing the SDGs in the decade of action.
Thank you very much, Mr. Sarin. And good afternoon to all colleagues, Madam Usana, Mr. Gawe, and Ms. Tongjai, and all the participants. Of course, because of COVID-19, we cannot help this, weaponize in person, but at least we still, stay connected and, create all the opportunity that we can discuss, about all of these important issues. There's no doubt that the COVID-19 has impacted our regions in many fundamental ways. Actually, we are not stranger to pandemic. We used to experience, many of this crisis in the past. What is different this time is the magnitude of the crisis, and that it hits us on almost all fronts at once. According to the World Bank, if the world economy is contracted by 5%, around 70 million people will fall under extreme poverty. But if the outbreak, continues to surge and the quality of healthcare system is not there, then the contraction could be even higher, and the numbers of people who live in extreme poverty will be even more. Of course, some sectors will be impacted more than others, and at least, in the ASEAN region, more than 150 million people work in the most affected sector, for example, hospitalities, travels, and so on. ASEAN member states have been very forceful in responding to COVID-19. When we first received the notifications of abnormal pneumonia case from our colleagues, from China, it took the member state around 17 days to declare some sort of, social restrictions and lockdown. Even with all of these measures, we can still see, the impact, and especially, the impacts on the most vulnerable population in our regions. The impacts do not just come from the COVID-19 itself, but also, from our containment measures as well. Some of our solutions, for example, working from home measure, it create, some uneven impact on different segments of the population. And one thing is very clear that, the pandemic is further exacerbating the problems of inequalities in the regions. We've been trying, very hard in improving the livelihood of the people, protecting the environments, and you can see that many of those achievements are closely related to the SDG. But the problems that we are encountering now, and also, the challenges that we have encountered even before the pandemic, some of the goals, of the SDG are still, not up to the level we want. Mr. Gawe will provide more details, information on this. But at least, from what we can see is, 15 out of 17 goals are still lagging behind, and the challenges ahead of us are very, very big. Perhaps I should start by talking a little bit, about some of the policy interventions and commitment from our leaders in responding to COVID as a particular area, but also, the commitment to further advance the Sustainable Development Goals. During the special summit in April, there was a declarations, and in the declarations it states very clearly, on the needs to work together to protect the people, to improve the well-being of people, and also to make sure that no one is going to be left behind. Of course, actualizing the declaration is some things that we are now trying to do. For example, we are now working on the comprehensive recovery plan, and in the comprehensive recovery plan, you can see, 5 major areas which look at the health of the people, the security of the people, the intra-ASEAN trade, economic integrations, and inclusive digitalizations, and so on. And all of this are also, aiming to address the implementations of the SDGs as well. And now we are trying to come up with more concrete, initiative on how we are going to address all of those issues. In addition to the declarations of our leaders and also the recovery framework, the relevant sectoral bodies are also taking steps, to address the COVID-19 and also to protect all the gains that we have achieved, over the past decades. For example, our ASEAN labor ministers, our ministers on social welfare and development, and also our ministers on rural development and poverty eradications. They are, showing the commitments and also putting in place measures that would help our people during these hard times. And another, set of initiatives that are not just looking at the problems of COVID-19, but how we can build back better, not just in terms of recovering from the pandemic and start grow the economy again, but how we can do it in a sustainable way, in an inclusive way, because now we have the opportunities. Of course, the pandemic creates so many challenges for us, but at the same time, we can also look at it as an opportunity for us to do some things that is not done in the past. And I know that there's a question: what's the biggest lesson that we can learn from all of this? I think that would be making sure that our recovery plan, we also have the components of the sustainable development goals, and we allocate enough budget to implement them. It's not just about producing the document, but also making sure that we have the resources to do all of them. We are now working on the online portals that would allow all the experts, to share views and so on how we can, address the problems of COVID-19, but also how we are going to reopen our economy in a safe manner and in a sustainable manner. And also, looking at the possibility of establishing the ASEAN, Center for Public Health Emergencies, so that we can be ready for the next pandemic. This pandemic is not going to be the last one. We are expecting more in the future, and what we can do is to build our resilience and to be ready, to take these challenges up front. We are also working closely with our partners, in creating various platforms that allow all experts, coming from different fields. Because as I mentioned, the COVID-19 is not just the health crisis, but it is also an economic crisis, a social crisis, and it's even a security crisis. So we need a comprehensive plan so that we can get out of these problems in a ways that would allow us, to build a more resilient communities and so on. A numbers of initiatives that I would like to also share, and all of these initiatives are very closely related to the implementations and the advancement of the Sustainable Development Goal. We are, organizing a regular planning agencies meetings now, and these are the people who are working on, the integration of the Sustainable Development Goals into the national policies. Of course, we don't have, the national SDG kind of plan, but, if we look at the national development plans of all the member states, we can see a lot of components of the SDGs in there. And by working closely with them, we can make sure that, when we are implementing the SDG, it's going to be done in a more comprehensive and strategic manner. We are working with partners, for example, China's and the UNDP in organizing the annual symposium and looking at different aspects of the SDG. We're looking at the financing part, we're looking at the localizing part, and the recommendation from the symposium have been also shared with the member states. So where applicable, they will also use some of the recommendation as part of the national development plans as well. We are working with our EU partners, on some form of dialogue, so that experts from the ASEAN member state and also from the EU can talk about, sustainable development goal. We are working very closely with our UN colleagues as well, and ESCAP is one of our strong partners. We're working on a range of issues, and recently we are working together on the declarations on combating drought, and hopefully, we get this declaration adopted by the leaders, and then we can come up with a regional plan of actions so that we can make sure it's not just a declaration, but some concrete activities that we can do to address the problems of drought. Um, Now, along with the many platforms that I just mentioned, we are also investing a lot in knowledge products as well. We are, hoping that the ASEAN Development Outlook will be released sometimes at the end of this year, and that will also, highlights both the achievements and all the challenges that we face, especially, looking from the inclusive perspective, looking from the sustainable development perspective. And this document, aims to provide some sort of, baseline understanding of how much we have achieved so far as well. But at the same time, be bold in terms of how we are going to do more to make sure that, the SDG will be advanced as quickly and as comprehensively as possible. Of course, now we are in the midst of COVID-19, although we are talking about, post-pandemic plan and so on. But it's very difficult for us, to kind of say, when would be the end of the pandemic. What is going to happen for sure is we are going to be in this situation for quite a long time. We can see, the experience of all of the member states. There's been no cases for numbers of months, but then suddenly there are new cases, and then put the whole countries back in lockdown and so on. So it's very difficult for us to say that now we are out of the pandemic or when is going to be the end of it. So we are now working on the socio-economic impacts of COVID-19, and we are hopefully, getting some things out of this impact study, and then, how we can shape the directions of our policies for the next 5 years. Actually, this year is a critical year for us because all of the sectoral bodies under the ASEAN social cultural communities are working on the new work plan, and we are now, trying to look at it from a different perspective. How can we, making sure that the things that we are doing, we have a greater impact, not just the numbers of activities we want to do, but we also want to make sure that, there's this cascading effects, by doing one activities, we also create impacts on another activities. And SDGs are closely, related to this document. Actually, numbers of our work plans have been, depending heavily on the SDGs and other, major documents that are looking at, the implementation of the SDG. Of course, the complementarity roadmap is one of the most important documents here, and I really, appreciate all the efforts, especially, the Thai government for putting a lot of effort and resources in doing this, and to make sure that the SDG, at least, some components of the SDGs align very well with the ASEAN Vision 2025. And it's not just the vision itself, but also, all of our work plans and blueprints. We are now talking about, making just one blueprint, and I hope that that would be, a kind of a fresh look at how we are going to do all of this. And of course, aligning the two important documents are one of the priorities that we are going to do when it comes to working on the next plan, for ASEAN. On the issues of collaborations, there's a few areas that I would like to share, and hopefully, this is some things that we are going to do for the next 5 years. The first one is the budget issues. Of course, it's always a problem then, when the members of the United Nations adopted the SDGs, the issues of budget is always there, and making sure that we have enough resources to implement all of the goals and activities is of utmost importance. And the same for us, for all the work plans that we have, the blueprint, the visions. We're working very closely with our dialogue partner, development partners, and I have to say is that they are very supportive. There are so many activities and programs that are supported by our dialogue partner, development partners. But one thing that I would like to highlight here, regarding the budget issues. Of course, now we are in the midst of the pandemic. A lot of countries are affected by it. The economy is slowing, so the availability of resources is in a big question mark now. Of course, the governments of all the countries would allocate as much resources possible to tackle the COVID-19 pandemic, and there will be, shortages in terms of resources to advance other areas of SDG or our visions and blueprint and work plan. But I, would like to highlight that it's also important for us to not lose sight of, the things that is very important to our sustainability, to our resilience, and also, being as a inclusive community. Um, for example, when it comes to the areas of uh, training, skills, education, healthcare, environments, and many others, they are also very important. And of course, cognizant of the lack of resources, what we should do is, to make sure that when we are allocating the budgets and using the budget, we will do it in a strategic manners, in a more targeted manners. And of course, the partners, dialogue partner, development partner, and international organizations can be very supportive in assisting us in doing all of this. The budget question is not just at the national level, but also at the regional levels as well. So I think we need to work together to make resources available so that we can kind of use to advance our goals, and not just the SDG, but also our work plans, our blueprint, because they are intertwined. So by creating a positive impacts, on the areas that we are now working on, we also contribute greatly to the implementations of the SDGs as well. Another things that we are going to work very closely with our partners is the scientific knowledge sharings. This is some things that we've been doing quite some times now, and also with our UN partner, including UNESCO, how we can make use of technological advances, innovations, and so on, and making sure that it serves not just the business purpose, but also contribute to poverty reductions, to the improvement of the livelihood of our people, to the sustainabilities of our environment, and all of this we can work with our partners. Actually, there's a numbers of activities that we've been doing together already, and some of the innovative ideas, some of the technological solutions that are available, in our partners' countries. They also shares, they also, experiments in some of the member state, and I hope, this endeavor can be further expanded so that, our people, more of our people can benefit from it. The third areas that I would like to also highlight is, our CANU efforts in enhancing our statistical capacity. This is very important. We've been working with partner very closely as well, the EU, the +3, and our UN colleagues. One of the challenges when it comes to implementing the SDG is, to make sure that we can know what we have achieved. There's always problems there. Of course, there are so many indicators that are coming with the SDG, but then, as I mentioned, that some of the goals and activities have been translated into the national policies, so they need a different sets of indicators to allow them to know, how much they progress, what are the areas they need to do most, and what would be the impact, and so on. And the initiative, to have the planning agencies to meet every year. One of the goal is to allow them to discuss and come up with, a framework that would allow them to better monitor, the progress and the implementations of the SDG. We also receive a lot of support from our partners in this regard, not just the financial resources, but also technical support as well. And I hope, we can further strengthen, our partnership in these areas as well, so that, we can put in place a strong, monitoring and evaluation framework that would allow the member state to know, how much we progress. I have to say that this is one of the big areas that we have. Looking at the work plans, looking at the many activities that we are doing. Of course, some have a very robust, M&E framework, and that allow the member state, to assess the progress and to understand the impact of the activities they're doing, but for some other activities and work plans, we don't have that robust systems in place. So sometimes that stop us from doing things in a more strategic manner, and we have to be more strategic given the scarcity, given the challenges posed to us by COVID-19. The fourth areas that I like to also raise as well, and this is some things that we have many potential areas to work with our partner, and we've been doing a lot already. It is the investment in the most needed sector, for example, infrastructure, renewable energies, and now is even more urgent than ever, which is the investment in digital connectivity. Hundreds of millions of our children and youth cannot go to school because of the lockdown, because of the social restrictions. Many schools have been closed, and only 53% of our population have access to internet. And when we are talking about this 53%, not all of them have the facilities, have the means, to make use of these digital platforms. And we can see, only a small fractions of our population can benefit from digital learning, remote learning, and so on. So this is one of the challenges, when the World Economic Forum conducted a surveys among our young people, and they, often raise this as one of the major challenges. Of course, when it comes to certain investment, it's going to be a big one. So the governments alone cannot do all of this. So we need to work with regional groupings, with the dialogue partner, development partner, to make sure that we have enough resources to invest in all of this. It's not just about making sure that all of our people can benefit from what we are doing, but also build an ASEAN regions into a more resilient, into a more stronger communities. The six areas that I would like to share here is the current efforts by the ASEAN Secretariat and also the ASEAN member state in bridging the gaps, or in a ways in working, creating an enabling environment. So our colleague from the university, from think tanks, not just within the region but also from outside the regions as well. We are planning actually this year to organize the ASEAN Think Tank Symposium, to talk about, leave no one behind, which is also part of the SDG. But because of COVID-19, we couldn't do it. Last year we did it once, and we found it very, interesting. And there's a lot of information, a lot of ideas that have been shared by our colleague, from the university, from the academic institution. And now, an event that we are now having, it is also organized by, our colleague from the Mahidol universities and the ASEAN Center for Policy Dialogue and Studies as well. So we can see, the benefits of, the contributions of our civil societies and also academic institutions in the policy discourse. And this is some things that we should, further enhance, and create an enabling environment so that all of them can work together. Another partners that we've been, working very closely, it is the private sector. Early this year, actually, we had this symposium on circular economy, which was funded and organized by SCG Thailand. And there's a lot of interesting ideas on how we can address environmental impact, with the new business model, with the new solutions, innovative. I have to say, there's a lot of creative idea coming from our private sector colleagues. So, they have the potential to contribute. And it's not just about some things that are related to economics or producing new product, but some other social responsibilities works, they can also greatly contribute as well, especially in times of hardship like this. The unemployment benefit, the support for our workers, those who work in the informal economy, small and medium enterprises. So there's a potential role for the private sector to contribute to this. And of course, the impacts that they are going to create will, greatly contribute to the advancement of the SDG. My last point, I think what is happening and was happening in the past as well is that, sometimes we often do things in a silo. One sector is focusing on one things, another sector is focusing on another things. So the big challenge for us going forward is, making sure that we have the synergies, that this coordination, so all relevant stakeholders, can come together and work on the SDGs and also, many other activities that we want to do. It's not just the whole of government approach, but also whole of society approach and whole of ASEAN approach. And our partners, will play a very important role in contributing to our efforts, especially in, our commitments and efforts to make sure that we can, achieve the SDG by 2030. The road ahead it's not easy, but I think we still have an opportunity to do something about it. And now we are talking about a comprehensive, large-scale recovery plan. So the SDGs should be part of that plan, and making sure that we allocate enough resources, to implement them. The new normal should be an inclusive one, a sustainable one, not just make economic sense, but also everyone should benefit from it. I would like to end my interventions here. In case we have more points to discuss, we can do so in the Q&A. Thank you very much.